Sorry, I'm just connecting on the record. Okay, so welcome. I think looking at the screen tonight, we've got lots of people online that I do know, so that's fantastic. Thank you for joining us. My name is Liz Whedon. I'm very pleased to introduce you to Damien. Damien is the export director at Chateau Palmer, and we're in for a treat tonight because not only do we have a fantastic lineup of wines, but the technology we were just testing is, can Damien take us on a tour of Chateau Palmer? Because that door behind him is the door out to the vineyard, and it's an absolutely magnificent morning in Bordeaux. So I'm going to hand you over to Damien because the answer is yes, we can go for a tour at Chateau Palmer. Damien, all yours.
Thank you, Liz. Bonjour à tout le monde. Very happy to connect with you, even via Zoom. It's just frustrating that we can't have this tasting together physically, and so I can't welcome you here in France, in Bordeaux, or I can't visit you in New Zealand. We are living quite particular days with this pandemic. The thing is, we continue to do what we are good at, making wine. And so even with all the turbulences related to the context and all this situation, we continue to do our best to produce wines. And we've been through this 2020 with lots of difficulties to face, lots of challenges, especially for a biodynamic and organic property. But well, we're here. We are behind a screen, but we're here. And I'll seize this opportunity to show you around because it's, as Liz was mentioning, it's absolutely beautiful morning. It's a little bit fresh, but it's very beautiful. It's definitely a spring morning with freshness in the morning and sunny day and just the kind of days we like at this stage of the cycle of the vine. Last night has been fresh, not too fresh, so we won't get negative temperatures this time. But last week the pressure was very different. We reached -4, -5 on certain very localized plots of the estate inside the appellation. So a little far from the river, where the river in fact play its role to thermically protect those vines, heating a little bit the atmosphere. And so this is how usually those plots never suffer from frost. But inside the appellation, inside the lands, last week we had to burn lots of candles. We also used our, I don't know how you call that in English, Liz, des éoliennes, sort of very fans. Modern, very cool windmills.
Yes, like fans to blow the wind around.
Like
yeah?
fans, fans. Massive fans, but yeah. Fans, yes. So let me show you around. Just to know that I'm not wearing a mask because we are under our third confinement in France. And so as you can see, there's not so many people at the estate right now. That might be Thomas Duroux, our general manager, and or vigneron somewhere, on the property. But I don't see lots of people. So in that case, I don't have to use my my mask. But this is how it looks like. You can see, Liz, is clear?
Yes, we can see. Yeah.
In this direction, in this direction, in fact, going on the west side, that's the direction of the river. And in fact, all those plots are Merlot plots. And nearby the river, where it's getting a little bit foggy and when you can see the trees back there, this is where we have our oldest plots of Merlot. So 90, 95 years old plots of Merlot. The thing is, we have a terroir composed by clay and gravels mainly. But once you get a little closer to the river, you have less clay and a little bit more of sand. And the sandy plots, in fact, permit to reach early arrival of aromatic maturities. And so, in fact, those plots, in other terms, permit to produce very fruity wines, very fruity lots, and it's really focused on this very bright, pure fruit. And even there are extremely old vines of Merlot, we keep selecting those plots for alter ego. So I know this preconceived idea is that old vines for the Grand Vin, young vines for the Second Vin. The thing is, we have our oldest Merlot at the property still dedicated to alter ego. And I think it's quite important to know that, because that's maybe different from what we can have in mind. For sure, the proportion of young vines in alter ego is more important than Chateau Palmer, the Grand Vin. But again, those old plots, which are very wise vines coming up with extremely civilized berries and with a great potential, are still used for alter ego. And because alter ego is an interpretation of the terroir, but definitely not a second option. And so with the sort of second quality, it's really the fact of a selection with two different spirits at the end in your glass, and with, again, different interpretation of this terroir. And the chateau itself, which is still here as well. And as you can see, again, the weather is absolutely fantastic today. It's a little bit fresh though, but it's cool. It's great.
I'm looking at Damien, looking at the weather and thinking this would be perfect weather to be tasting Premier.
Oh yeah. Exactly. That would be the perfect week, in fact, for this kind of testing and to introduce our new vintage. Those plots between us and Chateau Margaux. I'm sorry, there's Chateau Margaux next to us. Is another property in town, and they're also doing great wines. But I don't know if you heard of it, but they are there. So sorry, to show you all the neighbors. But so here, our Cabernet Sauvignon with an average of age around 32 to 35 years old, and in fact, those plots are planted on what we call le plateau. So we are literally on the top of a gravel hill. So it's an accumulation of gravels that we inherited from 1.4 and 1.5 million years ago with the erosion of first the Massif Central and all those gravels transported by a river called Dordogne. And gravels coming from the Pyrenees, transported by Garonne. So two main rivers in the southwest of France. So this is how we got those parcels, those plots. And if you love geology, that correspond to the Gunz era. So there are gravel terrace of type 3 and type 4 in Margaux appellation in general. And for Palmer also. For the little story, Aubryon and Lascaz have also parcels of type 3 and type 4, which is quite interesting because we are not exactly close to each other, but you may find more similarities with some of their plots and Chateau Palmer compared to Chateau Margaux or Rosan-Segla or just properties which are very nearby. So as you see, the house of our gardener, but not his house, but where he put his things, to take care of the gardens. So life is here. We are all alive, and again, the property continue to live its days. Despite the context, despite the pandemic, the En Primeur campaign is definitely threatened again in the way that we can't welcome our clients, and we will only welcome a very limited number of journalists. So I don't know if there will be a lot of comments and scores for the 2020, but well, that would be another year like that. and we will try, in fact, to give you as much as possible information for you to have this 20 in mind, and for you to have an idea on the quality of this wine, of this vintage. Maybe just one little thing about biodynamic practice at Palmer and organic practices at Palmer. We continue to be in 2009 with the first experiments with a couple of hectares. We are fully biodynamic since the vintage 2014. Since 2014, two main achievements, if I can say. The first one is a technique that we apply in the cellar now, which is called the micro-levurage, micro-yeasting, which consists in adding the yeast into the vats right after the sorting, so that we don't use any more liquid sulfur to protect the grapes, the surface of the vats, before we start the alcoholic fermentation. The role of the liquid sulfur after the sorting and before the alcoholic fermentation, it's antiseptic. It's just to stop the development of bacteria and to protect the grapes. But the thing is, with the micro-levurage, so if you apply micro quantity, you're spreading it in a very regular flow after the sorting, you realize that the yeast colonize the space, protect the grapes, and stop the development of bacteria. And in that case, you can get rid of liquid sulfur, which at the end may sort of switch off the berries and the bright of the berries when you try to conduct alcoholic fermentation. And the thing is, I don't know, it won't sound very scientific, but Rudolf Steiner said something terribly simple, but absolutely easy to verify. Sulfur calls sulfur. In fact, the earlier you get your berries in contact with liquid sulfur, and the more your berries will be asking for more sulfur to finish the process of transformation. And you create this dependency too early, in fact. So with these techniques, we drastically reduce the quantity of combined sulfur in our wines, around 40% less combined sulfur than before. So that's quite significant. The second thing since 2014 is in 2017, we are back again with 100% of natural yeast. So population of yeast extracted from our own parcels. I know that in Burgundy, most of guys there and a couple of friends, when you say that, they anyway never stop to work with natural yeast. In Bordeaux, maybe things are a little bit different. Selected yeast, dehydrated yeast, we were buying from labs, was the fact of the 90s, the early 2000 years. And now we are recovering from this time and going back to more traditional and more natural way to work. But 66 hectares of vines and everything let's say vinified with 100% of natural yeast. That's apart from that, biodynamic for us means recreating virtuous cycle of life. So that's why we have animals, cows for the manure, sheep to graze on parcels, because we cherish a natural cover crop at the property. I don't know, there are so many other things we do. Agroforestery is also a very important topic for us. We recently planted many trees, especially fruit trees, inside the plots, inside the vineyard, so that we have obstacles, so that we have potential houses for lots of population of birds that we need back again in the parcels, because birds are the first predators for many insects, that we try to regulate, population of insects that we try to regulate, but in not a natural way. So that's the whole idea. Biodiversity for a virtuous circle of life, and this is it. And I've seen a question briefly on the risk of losing the production. The risk exists. I give you 11 hectoliter per hectare produced at Palmer. We have lost 2/3 of the crop in 18. We failed in protecting the vineyard efficiently. The spring has been so wet, and so it was proper rain showers in just a few days. So all treatments were literally cleaned up, and so we had to treat it again to protect the vineyard. But the thing is, when you're in biodynamic, you only protect your vines with a sort of a homeopathy. That's not, antibiotics that you give to your vine. It's just a protection, which is a contact protection made of copper a little bit, combined with different preparations such as valerian, bourdain. We also had very efficient results combining the copper with, Liz, help me, orti-nitol. Is that nitol?
Sorry, adding the copper to, at what stage?
Orti. It's a plant called orti in French. Nitol?
Is it nettles?
Nitol, yes.
You use
when you
nettles
touch
in
it,
Biodynamic.
it's getting very, it's irritating, and it's very itchy.
Yes, yeah, it's a nettle.
Okay, so nitol. So nitol goes very well in some herbal preparations that we combine with our treatments. One thing about copper, because there's so many pros and cons everywhere in the world when it's time to talk about biodynamic, organic, etc. It's important to remember that copper, and especially the amount of copper we can use on parcels, is now regulated by very drastic guidelines by Demeter, by EcoCert. So nowadays we use roughly 3 to 4 kilos as an average, 3 to 4 kilos of copper per hectare, which is very, very small, and which is pretty much the same amount as conventional properties. The second thing about copper, biodynamic properties, we have to treat more regularly, more often. That means that you come with your tractors inside the parcels with a more important frequency. That being said, the carbon print of biodynamic properties is better than most of people think, because most of biodynamic properties favorize natural cover crop, so lots of green zone inside the parcels. And in fact, those plots, those parcels, this organization permits to fix very efficiently the production of CO2. So in fact, the question is not on how much of CO2 you produce, but the question is how much the property itself is capable to fix and retain the CO2 you produce. And this is how, with those practices, we can have a negative carbon print at Palmer. About the quantity of copper in soils, a recent study called Yamakazi, it's Japanese name, but it's a compilation of many different studies, and so with lots of facts, lots of quantified tests on plots, reveals that to finally find traces of pollution made by the copper on soils, you have to use above 35 to 40 kilos per hectare of copper to first identify, analyze the traces of pollution in the soils. So when you're using 3 to 4 kilos a hectare, when you realize that the pollution can be identified only after 35, 40, and with an impact on the quality of the soils, you see that we are extremely far from all the lobbying which is made by laboratories nowadays, because laboratories, if in fact properties realize that with copper you can solve most of the problems and protect your vineyard very efficiently, then it's lots of products, chemical products that you won't buy, all those alternatives proposed by the labs. Voilà, so laboratories and chemistry in vineyards, and that's definitely our mission to continue this way. And I'm happy that wonderful gentlemen such as Hubert de Bois and many others like Latour as well, when those people were maybe not 100% dedicated to those new practices, or let's say all the new practices, they are now leaders and they are now converting their properties, and it's fantastic for Bordeaux, because we need those gentlemen to well, just to push and to help Bordeaux to become better and just better winemaking.
Perfect. So tell me, Damien, with the frosts in the last few nights or last week, you would have been okay with the vineyards down on the river, but what do you know what sort of percentage the problem has been in Bordeaux?
Percentage, we don't have it yet. There are some severely touched parcels, like the young Lozé, which is now dedicated to the production of vin blanc. So this young vine suffered a lot from the frost, and so we apparently lost the whole production from this young Lozé. In terms of percentage, again, we don't know yet. Also, on a parcel called Choukri, it's been extremely cold. It was -5, -4 for more than 4 or 5 hours, and even with the candles, even with the fans, we couldn't protect those parcels. So that's another part of the production which is lost. We need to wait for the next few days to calculate that, to see also on the vines, you know, if the young shoots, you know, declining and going down, and so to finish to measure all the damages, and at this time we will know. But our feeling is that it has been extremely localized, and it could have been much worse compared to the temperatures we had. So we are kind of safe, I think, compared to the Chablis, compared to the right bank, maybe. But it's not finished yet. You know, we have the ice saints on the end of the first week of May. Well, that's a very old croyance from our ancestors, the ice saints. But the thing is, the possibility to have frost again in the first half of May exists, and so we won't sleep very well till we haven't passed this.
Damien, if there's been some interest here in the frosts, I think partly because we have shared some photos with our customers of some of it. But one thing that I was asked this week, and I'd be interested what you do at Chateau Palmer, is, of course, it's early enough in the season that there could be a second lot of buds. Will you use fruit from a second fruit set if it's set again?
Second generation of grapes. In fact, we could use it. I mean, it's permitted to use second generation of grapes. The thing is, those grapes, will, of course, be very late in the classic process of growing. And so the question is, with the second generation of grapes, would they have time, would they have enough time, in fact, to reach optimal maturities? And most of the time, the occasion is not given to wait enough long in the season, especially in autumn, for those second generation of grapes to reach phenolic maturities, even technologic maturities with acidities and sugar to be then useful berries to produce fine wines. So, so by experience, I haven't been witnessing a Palmer with second generation of grapes in the blend. 17 was a year of frost with a very severe frost, a black frost, which happened at night. For the last few days, we are talking about white frost, which is a little different, a bit less aggressive, but it's when the temperature goes negative very suddenly and for 2-3 hours early in the morning and not in the middle of the night. And then it's when the sun shines, it is the sun transpersing and so the frost fixing on the plant plus the light, which is burning, in fact, the shoots. And so that's how we talking about black frost versus white frost. And when sometimes we do screen of smoke, so when we're doing fires, it's to make a screen between the light and the frost early in the morning. So that's what we did also for a few parcels at Palmer, and so trying to limit the damages. But well, again, second generation of grapes, tough. 17 black frost, we've lost close to 20%, I think, of the production, and no second grapes. I think in 1991, I was young, but I understood that there were no second generation of grapes neither in the 91.
Okay, I didn't think you used them. I remember when I last tasted, it must have been the 17 when there'd been the frost, and it was very interesting. I asked at every property that I tasted through Bordeaux, and I found it very fascinating who did use that second generation and who didn't. And it was very clear in the style of the wine. And, you know, I think it's where when you have that come through in a year, you know, it's where you really need to know what's happened and not just the vintage conditions, but what the property has done. And yeah, it's very interesting. Very tough what Mother Nature's doing right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Mother Nature sometimes permits to produce almost perfect wines with a succession of perfect conditions, perfect seasons, and sometimes it comes with very tough challenges. But c'est la vie. Hein?
True. Very good. Thank you. So shall we start with the white first?
The white wine, well, long story short, for many years, this wine was a very best kept secret wine, 1.4 hectares dedicated to a production of white wine to be served during our lunches and dinners at the chateau with the owners, our business partners we were welcoming, etc. In the pure tradition of white wines produced on the left bank in the Médoc region. Before serving the reds, so let's say before serving the big guys, it was a little bit of white produced to start a lunch or a dinner, because it comes naturally in the sequence during such a venue like that. And so for many years, in fact, we didn't have a label for this wine. It was just bottled and kept like this. The production of white at Palmer stopped, we think, in the 60s. the last bottles of white we found from vintages 28 and 29 with a label, which in fact was literally the label of Palmer, but in white. So instead of the dark blue and gold, it was exactly the same label, but just in white. And so last bottles we kept just for history, because not exactly sure on the quality of those wines after more than 80 years. And we just decided in 2004 to recreate this vineyard and to reproduce a little bit of white wine. But this is how in 2004, we've planted this 1.3 hectare parcel with 4 different grape varieties, Lozé, Muscadel, and Sauvignon Gris. And this is how in 2007, we were producing our first vintage again of Vin Blanc Palmer. What's the alcohol percentage of white wine? For the 2014, I don't know. I have to check. I don't have it because I don't have the bottle with me now, and I think it's 13.
Hold on, we've got a bottle here, Damien, so we'll just check.
Okay.
We'll answer that question in a minute.
The reason of choosing those grape varieties was not to produce a white wine in the classic idea of the production of white in Bordeaux. The Sauvignon and the Semillon, etc., are sort of the classics for us. So we thought, okay, if we produce again a white wine, and if it's for the owners, if it's for private receptions like that, let's do it in a funnier way, and so let's try to come up with something which is just a little story by itself. And the thing is, the Lozé is a far cousin of the Uni Blanc, and was planted in the southern region, currently 19th century, because in fact the Lozé apparently, after some extra researches, was very great, coming up with a great environment for the development of the botrytis. So this fungus, which at the end comes with the noble rot, and which is fantastic. In fact, in the blend of sweet white wines. Voilà, Sauvignon Gris, well, quite a classic. Well, it's not a Sauvignon Blanc, but it's the cousin of the Sauvignon Blanc, the Sauvignon Gris, and the Muscadel, which is also well known in Bordeaux. Alors, Muscadel usually is used in blends of white wines in the region, up to 15-20%. In Vin Blanc Palmer 14, it's 52% of Muscadel, and that explains this extremely exotic fruit, this quite exotic touch, even exotic nose, compared to the other whites you may find in Bordeaux. It's definitely the fact of the Muscadel. The Lozé, in fact, compared to the Muscadel, is another kind of a variety which comes with a capacity to structure things and coming up with very sophisticated aromas, but also a bit more fragile. But it comes with the intensity, it comes with the structure, but it's not about the freshness or the aromatic side of the Muscadel. And the Sauvignon Gris, just to add on the sophistication on the palate and all the aromas. It's very concentrated, especially the 14. Right. And the mouth is very round, and this Lozé add for me the sweetness and then the Muscadel plays part, coming up with very precise, fresh, delicate aromas. And the thing is, it's 2014, and you see how this wine is evolving in a quite serious way, and saving great freshness, a very lively fruit. And so you realize, in fact, that this white wine has a real potential of aging, which is maybe not that spontaneous when you think of whites from Bordeaux.
So what was the percentage of the varieties again?
52 Muscadelle, 30% of Lozé, and 18% of Sauvignon Gris.
Sorry, 15% of Lozé. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Amazing wine, Damien. I think Stephen's comment here is great. He said, wow, fantastic mouthfeel, concentration and power. Mouth has been salivating since the very first sip, which I think sums it up really well.
Thank you for the comments. It's a great white wine, and the thing is, it's such a small production. We are talking about 2,000 bottles roughly since 2007. So it's very precious because of the rarity, and it's lots of fun as well in terms of style, in terms of attitude, because it's very different from what you could find in Bordeaux. And the Lozé, which is in fact quite related to the Uni Blanc in terms of style. The Lozé may refer to some balance that you find in the whites in the Rhone Valley, or some Italian white wines made of Uni Blanc mainly. And the way it evolves, it has this oxidative style naturally, which definitely refers to some production of whites in Italy with Uni Blanc again.
Damien, how many bottles of it do you make?
2,000, roughly 2,000.
We're very lucky to have it here in New Zealand.
Oh, yeah. You are, yeah. But you have the exclusive allocation for the country. So, so in fact, if someone needs this bottle on this table for his dinner, they would need to talk to you. Yes. So you control the market.
I think, as you know, it's a wine I like very much. So I'm very pleased that we can have it here in New Zealand. So, yeah.
I saw citrus fruit, agrumes, citrus, mandarin, young mandarin, not yet matured. All those flavors. Also, the fact of the muscadelle, and also maybe the Sauvignon Gris. But it's very true. Yeah. Citrus touch, which is about freshness and again fragile but delicate aromas.
In terms of the other part of the question, are the grape varieties grown in New Zealand? Sauvignon Gris, yes. Muscadelle, a very small amount. Lozé, not that I'm aware. In fact, yeah, I haven't seen it anywhere. Do you know if it's grown anywhere other than in Bordeaux, Lozé?
We rediscovered this grape variety in Jurançon. Because there were one producer there who was, I say was, maybe he's very fine and he's continued to do what he was doing before. The thing is, it is a very old gentleman that I met once, I think 7 or 8 years ago, and he's dedicated to ancient varieties which disappeared with the phylloxera. And so this is how he has this sort of laboratory inside his plots with many different species which disappeared at the end of the 19th century, early 20th century with the phylloxera again. And the Lozé was part of those ancient grape varieties which disappeared, which was planted in Bordeaux region and especially in Sauternes, and which has been classified by the INAO into this category of varieties called abandoned grape varieties, donc cépage oublié. It's a legal denomination for grapes which are not authorized anymore in guidelines of appellations. How long this wine, the potential of aging? Well, we don't have a very big feedback yet because the first vintage produced was the 2007. And I can tell you that 2007 shows a great attitude and is very classy wine. The oxidative style is even more present in the 7, but still it comes with a very profound, intense fruit and with a fantastic freshness. So you still have the balance, you still have a very vibrant fruit. And so I think if you give to this wine another, the 14, if you give to this wine another 5-6 years, it will continue to develop great complexity and show great potential. After 10-15 years, frankly, I'm not very sure with all the variation you may have from a bottle to another, etc., etc. So I can only tell you that the bottles of 7 we still have in our library stock shows lots of attitude and are still fantastic wines, very precise and very fresh, still with a very lively fruit. How this wine will continue to evolve, difficult to tell you precisely.
Very good, excellent. Thanks, Damien. So folks, if you haven't already, you've got a total of 4 red wines there in your next flight. So it goes very easily from the oldest wine. Damien's already got his well sorted. He's got all it, look at that. I mean, absolutely beautifully lined up. But now if you start with the 2001, you've got them on your tasting mats there, and just go through and perhaps pour the next 4 wines. And then we'll have Damien the next 4 red wines in front of us. Is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right, I can see lots of people pouring things, Damien. This is good. Yeah, well, let's see a month.
Well, 2001 for me is remarkable, and what is remarkable is the in fact the freshness in the balance. It comes with comes up with very precise tannins, a very delicate structure, and as well as a very delicate fruit. And the whole thing with this 2001 is about the freshness and the precision, and this freshness in the balance. I know that we use maybe too much the word classic when we talk sometimes on production in Bordeaux, but the thing is, the classicism in Bordeaux refers to something very well identified. Classicism in Bordeaux wines is about a fresh and delicate balance, and so with a fruit with a little bit of austerity, because austerity is not a big word, and it refers to this very subtle, delicate fruit supported by a structure which is not massive, but just being at the right place with all the acidities also here present, and giving the line and the structure itself, the tannins, to play this role of structuring the wines. And this is how this 01 for me is an example of classicism, because it reunifies all those components to come up with a perfect balance, just a precise, fresh, delicate balance. And is my kind of wine, for sure. Very representative of maybe that I've been educated to. And when my father-in-law sorry, my stepfather and some friends, you know, when they introduced me to the world of fine wines, this kind of palette, this kind of taste was my reference for Bordeaux. In terms of blend, 01 is dominated by the Cabernet Sauvignon. So you have 51% of Cabernet, 44% of Merlot, and the rest is Petit Verdot.
You know, Damien, we say it, you know, time and time again. You know, this is an example, I think, of a classic, you know, as you call a classic year, or perhaps a year that, you know, is not one of the big superstars, but it's a year that is drinking really, like, that's beautiful old wine now. You know, it's lovely. It shows how, you know, even vintages we're often too quick to write off vintages, I guess is what I'm saying.
I totally agree with that. I mean, great wines don't have to show off and don't have to explode in mouth to prove that they are beautiful, they are well concentrated, they are matured. For me, the real essence of a great wine is about a certain balance, a certain harmony between the fruit, between the freshness, the structure, and it can be in a very shy way to show this attitude, to show this class, because 01 has lots of class, lots of attitude, and again, is so representative of the production of Bordeaux.
Yeah, it's beautiful. We've got a question again on the ABV. I don't have that bottle with me. Do you know what the alcohol of that one is, Damien?
For the 01, you have to give me a minute so that I check the bottle.
Okay, perfect. Does while we're waiting just for Damien to check that, any thoughts on that? Does everyone like it, or? We've got some nodding. Must have some comments. Everyone busy typing. Yeah, poise and elegance, yeah. I sort of want to say like it's classic claret, but then I'm sort of thinking I sound quite old.
I guess everyone's quite spoiled these days nowadays with banger vintage after banger vintage. They don't know what.
I think the distance from where Damien is to where the bottles are it's 2 rooms over. So he'll come back.
Ta-da!
There we go.
13.5, and soft and elegant, great flavors of smoky. Oh, beautiful! Yeah, smoky. Part of the secondary aromas which develop itself with a bit of evolution. All those notes of truffle, cigar leaves, this smoky taste he was referring to. It comes with a little bit of evolution, and that's the signature of the sophistication of Bordeaux with a few years, and entering a new stage of maturity, because I know that we keep talking about apogee for wines, and so trying to imagine that there might be a better moment, the best moment to drink this bottle or this bottle. I don't really believe in that, because apogee, I think it's just a fantasy that it's no one managed to prove. Wines are going this way, and so sometimes they're extremely interesting cycles, and so the wine comes with very good intentions and show lots of sophistication and precision, and with a very vibrant fruit. But then sometimes the wine can switch off again, then come back. And so that's why I'm not very comfortable with this idea of apogee. But for sure, I believe in a smooth evolution. And so with the arrival of secondaries, third aromas, and which is just the fact of aging. And it's great to be witness of the sophistication and of all those complex aromas that the wine can offer.
So Damien, having just said that, you think they go through stages and that it's always different. With this wine, if customers are sort of looking at, are they going to keep this or are they going to drink it? What do you think?
Pardon, Liz. I wasn't listening because I was reading the question of Stephen, which is an extremely pertinent question. Today is a fruit day, and so that might be very helpful to taste wines and to have wines in a better mood. But sorry. Yeah,
definitely. And I think it'll be interesting through your wines. I was just saying, in terms of, if you had this in your cellar, would you be keeping it or drinking it?
Your one? I would drink it. I would drink it because, don't know how many bottles I have, but because I managed to keep just a few wines to continue and so checking the evolution of this wine with a bit more of time. But for me, the 01 is the kind of wine I would love to have for my dinner, because it's also so easy to combine with food, a vintage with those civilized aromas, and this is such a great attitude. It's just fresh, delicate, and it's not massive, it's not exuberant, but it's just at the right place, and so with very fine food, with a good chef at home, this would be a pure moment of pleasure. So I would definitely invite you to drink it.
Very good. Excellent. Yeah. And Stephen, your note about biodynamic. Damien, am I right that, although this was before the full conversion to biodynamic, in the 2001, some of it was biodynamic?
No. 2001? No. I mean, you mean, sorry, Liz, for Palmer or in general in Bordeaux?
At Palmer, were you
doing
no. any biodynamic technique?
No, I don't think so. The beginning of the conversion is 2009, and so with the first experiments in 2009.
Okay. So I think that answers Stephen was, yeah, cool. Thank you. Very good. So 2009 started. Okay.
This make me think that, and that's an interesting topic, and we can spend hours and hours discussing it. Is there a before and after conversion, and so there is there a before and after all those new practices in the vineyard? Our feeling, and with the first result that we can measure, if there is some, is that the parcels and the fruit itself now come up with a great purity, which is giving us much more visibility, much more precision in the reading of the singularity of plots and parcels. In fact, I like the analogy of Thomas he used a few years ago. He was talking about an old painting that you forgot in the attic and full of dust, and so with all the colors disappearing and small details of the painting which wasn't very clear anymore, and then you start to restore, you start to renovate the painting, and you rediscover those bright colors, and you rediscover all those details on the picture, and that's what happened to us. We rediscovered the singularity of every single plot, and in terms of vinification, working with a more expressive, a purer fruit, and so with better visibility, you are definitely more precise on conducting alcoholic fermentations and even malolactic fermentations. And when you're doing a blend tasting session, same. You have your portfolio of plots, and when you go from a parcel to another, the taste of the place is becoming very obvious. So I'd like you to disconnect with the notion of it's good or bad, and because that's again extremely subjective, and there were fantastic wines in the 80s, in the 70s, and when Bordeaux was about different yields, and with the introduction of chemistry, with this massive industrialization in agriculture in general in France. But the thing is, the gain is about this visibility and precision, and in the singularity of the plots, and I think we are getting very, very far from the standardization of the taste. But the thing is, recreating rediscovering the singularity of a parcel, of a place, doesn't mean that the wine will be better or worse. It's just that the wine will be a better reflect of what it has, inside, and the real essence of this terroir.
Very good. So the next one will represent having moved partially onwards.
So you also have the 2010.
2010 next, yes. That's not good. What's wrong with
It's still a little bit early to drink, so I use the spittoon. Well, 2010, just fantastic vintage, very complete. for me, he has the power, he has the depth, the intensity that the greatest years have, but saving on its way the freshness and the balance. And when you reach that, when you manage to produce a wine very concentrated, very well matured, with those tannic mass, and but still being that accessible, and with that much precision and freshness, that's the moment that you're making the best you can do, and that's the moment that Mother Nature helps to come up with just the perfect balance, because the perfect balance is in nature. And as winemakers, the idea is to intervene as less as possible, and in 10, it's just the fact of the terroir, just perfect square. The fruit is developing in a very smart way. It comes with persisting aromas, flavors of dark blue fruits, and yeah, it's the sign of a year with great maturations, and at the end we are talking about a wine which is now getting a little bit accessible, but with the potential of aging, which is impressive. Now the wine is just getting a little bit more civilized so that you can enjoy it, but it's definitely a very first stage, I think, and it will continue to develop this sophistication, this complexity, and you don't have yet the secondary, third aromas, but it will arrive, but not that early. So no rush with the 10.
I love, Damien, there's a real purity to the fruit. I think, it's a character I liked about the vintage as a whole, but particularly at Palmer, you see that real clarity to the fruit. And then that characteristic acidity with the 2010 gives lovely freshness to the wine.
Pure, bright fruit. The fact of the Merlot, it's 54% of Merlot in 2010, is one of the rare vintages recently dominated by the Merlot. We have the encépagement at Palmer is 47 Merlot, 47 Cabernet, and 6% Petit Verdot. That's what we have planted in the vineyard. And so the presence of the Merlot in our case is historic. Chateau Palmer, the British Major General who arrived at this estate in 1814, came up with this Merlot culture. In 1938, our actual owners, but with the Millet and other local families, was also a lot into the Merlot. And so the Merlot is clearly part of the signature of Palmer wines. And if you recognize a Palmer amongst other wines in the region, that's, I think, very often the fact of the Merlot. We have our Merlot, planted on the plateau. I was showing you earlier, but the fact that we have all those Merlot overlooking the river, and so benefit with the benefit of plot parcels with a very well-controlled hydric stress, with this capacity to retain the water, create a pocket of water, with the nappe phréatique very deeply in the soil. You are 15, 16 meters higher compared to the sea level, which is not extremely high, but in the Médoc region, which is extremely flat, it means that you are on the top of the gravel hill. And so with this capacity to, in the season, with an important hydric stress, to develop a very complex rooting system and to get the water very deeply in the soils and to always regulate the nutrition, and at the end, to come up with perfectly balanced grapes, perfectly balanced fruits. So Merlot, if it's planted on the right place, the Merlot can also show great sophistication and a very, very smart fruit. I think this is what you have in 10, very smart Merlot.
Definitely, yeah. Incredible wine, Damien. Yeah,
Very serious.
very pleased. Yeah, you've got some, I think you can see the comments there, a lovely comment there from Stephen. Yeah, a teenager, Stephen, perhaps a little bit more well-behaved. Yeah, and I think John's comment, Damien, is interesting there, because I think the 10 and 01 are two very, very different style wines. You know, the 01, you mentioned it before, is, you know, like the style of wines you grow up drinking, whereas I think the 10 is, I don't like the term, but a more modern style of Bordeaux. And, you know, certainly I know if I sort of put my commercial hat on, I can see in our purchasing, we have customers that purchase the classic vintages, and we have customers who purchase like the 2010, and I think they're very different. Yeah.
Well, yeah, and you know, it's normal to be seduced by the 10 because it's just such a spectacular wine. So it's difficult to miss the beauty of a 10, because this beauty is so obvious and so here, and it's just charming. And it's so trying to seduce you with this sweetness, with this so profound and intense fruit, and this purity of the fruit is absolutely fantastic. So it's kind of normal to prefer 10 because it's so attractive. 01, maybe it's when you are in a different mood and when you like to go into details, and maybe that's something a little bit geeky, and then when you like to go into details, and when you like to go into more technical aspects of the wine and its evolution, etc. Because you see the things from very inside, and it's fun. But well, if you offer me a glass of 10 for my dinner tonight, I would definitely drink it and finish it. The thing is, if you want to have your 10 now, I would suggest to double or even triple decant the wine so that it breathes and so that it's reactivated. Keeping a wine in a carafe, in a decanter for 2-3 hours and exposing your wine to air, I'm not a big fan, because it's just exposing wine to air, and usually the result is not good. What is interesting decanting wines is, you know, when the moment that you're moving the wine from a container to another, and you know, that's the moment that you sort of wake up the wine, you are reactivating everything, and it's more the transportation, it's more the movement, you know, which is interesting, more than just the exposure to air.
Some more comments there on the 01 for drinking now and the 10 for putting in the cellar. And that's always a wonderful thing with Bordeaux, is you know, you've got wines for drinking now and wines for cellaring. Keeps you in business and us in business, Damien. Very good. So tell us about what have we got next? 2011.
11 is a year of hail. So we've lost a substantial part of the production again. I think at the time the production was around 19-20 hectoliters per hectare. So I think it's a production of 7,000-8,000 cases of 12. This is it. So quite small. And so at the end, this 11 is quite unexpected wine. After the hail, we started the summer season with an average of 1.5 2 grapes per vine tree. And of course, at this moment is the whole energy of the vine, which is dedicated to one grapes, one or two grapes. And so that's quite unusual. And this is how this 11 has reached this concentration and this intensity. 11 for me, there are just two things to remember. The smallest yield since the 61, the legendary 61, and at the end, a quite unexpected and unusual concentration for a vintage which has been fresh from beginning till the end. Spring was fresh and humid. The summer itself has been fresh and humid again. No episode of heat wave, a few good windows with sunny days and good temperatures, but no excess at all. Is a summer just being a very classic and normal summer for the temperate weather we have in Bordeaux with the influence of the ocean. And so at the end, a wine with a fresh and delicate balance. But in our case, and because of the hail again, and because of this small amount of grapes on trees, early July, it's a very impressive concentration. Palmer use, j'ai pas vu la fin. Sorry, different size of barrels. Is that correct?
The question is asking, do you use different sizes of barrels, and what is the philosophy behind this as opposed to changing the balance of new and old oak? So why use size, I guess, versus just changing between new and old? Hopefully, Dave, I've got that summed up right.
Barrels, they are always the same. It's 225 liter barrels, the classic ones. In 2011, in fact, it was only those traditional barrels made of French oak. And at this time, I think we were still working with only 4 different coopers. The thing is, the proportion of new oak, new barrel and old barrels or barrels of one vintage hasn't changed much for the last 15, 20 years at Palmer. Palmer has always been around 45 to 50% of new oak, and Alter Ego always been 25 to 30% of new oak, but this is it. Maybe we have reached 55, 60% of new oak. Of new barrel 9 and 10, but yeah, nothing. I would say too adventurous in the aging. How long does the wine stay in the barrels? 18 to 20 months.
That 2011 is a fantastic wine, Damien. I think it's, yeah, Stephen's just saying here again, fascinating to see the 11 next to 10, which makes the point yet again that great producers can make lovely wines in tough vintages. They just show a lot earlier. Yeah, I think it's one of the fantastic things about Bordeaux, you know, when you really get under the hood of Bordeaux and start looking at the different vintages and different producers, you know, vintages like 11, vintages to buy and to drink earlier. And that's super charming right now, Damien.
It is. And what is curious with, again, this 11, because there is a lack of notoriety for this vintage. The problem of 11 is that it arrived after 9 and 10. So he has, next to him, he has very spectacular wines. So it's difficult for this 11 to play its magic and to find his place. But for me, 11 is an anomaly in Palmer and amongst the recent vintages produced, because again of this concentration and this extremely opulent Merlot. It has a very profound, opulent, even quite exuberant Merlot. And for a year like that, that was completely unexpected, because that's definitely not the synthesis of the vintage. That's definitely not the characteristic of the vintage. No Petit Verdot in 11. We lost everything because of the hail. In fact, Petit Verdot, well, I don't want to bother with too much details, but the Petit Verdot is the most fragile plant we're growing here in Bordeaux. The Petit Verdot has extremely fragile shoots. And so if you have big rains, or if you have rains, it can even cut surgically the shoots, and so extremely fragile. When you manipulate those plants, when you go through your plots, the Petit Verdot, you have to be extremely careful. So fragile. When you come with the tractor as well, you definitely have to be careful. It cuts, so easily. I remember when I was young, when I was starting to work in vineyards, I don't know, I was 15, 16, something like that, on weekends, or, to help friends or friends of your parents, etc. There is a moment, in the summer, that you have to do relevage. So in fact, you have, I don't know how to explain that in English. This practice, Lise, relevage, is, you have those two wires from a point to another on rows that you have to get a little bit upper, following the growing season, and so following the evolution of the plants and the shoots growing. Because first, at the beginning of the season, the wires has to be very low to keep the shoots inside the parcel, so well organized, and so in one row. And once it's growing, then you have to get those wires a little bit upper, so that the shoots are kept, still well organized and going straight. And might be not very clear.
No, your explanation is very good, though. That's perfect. I think we all understand.
Okay. Well, so when you were doing that, the levage, in late July, with the Petit Verdot, sometimes when you take those wires and you're getting a little upper, sometimes the shoots of Petit Verdot was coming with the wire, terribly fragile.
Yeah, fragile through the growing season, but also very susceptible during frost.
Yes.
Yeah, excellent. So what are we on to next? We're 2012.
To me, 12 is an interesting sum up of what we had in 9 and 10. So with powerful wines, great maturity, quite opulent, exuberant fruit, and I would say the freshness and the balance of the 11. And this is how this 12 becomes the cool guy, which is maybe not as intellectual and maybe not as sophisticated and complex compared to a 10 or compared to another great vintage, but this 12 comes with just an easy, accessible, generous fruit. And I think it's the generosity of the fruit for me that I would like to highlight. It's just a generous, simple fruit revealing itself, developing itself, occupying, your palate, and with a structure which is here, but which is not too massive, not showing off at all. And so I like the simplicity of this vintage. This would be a vintage to drink a little bit early, I think, compared to the others.
It's got a very nice sort of completeness to it. It's quite round and generous in comparison to the other wines. And I think, if you sort of look back, I think a little bit like perhaps the 04 vintage was, which was a vintage that was sort of missed by a lot of people. And then all of a sudden everyone worked out it was drinking really well. And this reminds me in terms of structure a little bit like that, where, a vintage perhaps missed and then, came through and is a really good drinker.
I totally agree with that. Totally agree. And I also like the comparison with the 04, because I think 04 was also this kind of wine a little bit underestimated at the beginning because of a lack of concentration, lack of complexity. But then when we started to drink, we started to open our 04, it was about this simple, fresh fruit revealing itself right away, just being very generous and right on stage. And I like the 12 because he has this kind of attitude as well. That's an occasion, I think, to enjoy another face of Bordeaux when wines are just being very modest and accessible and focusing on the fruit.
Everyone seems quite quiet on the 2012. Maybe they're just enjoying drinking it. It's a shame that it's first. Well, it's not. It's what time is it now, Damien? Almost 11. Yeah. We're very lucky that you changed clocks and we changed clocks. So there's now a 2-hour difference. Before it was 12 hours. So.
Yeah, well, I thought I had to come at Palmer around 6:30, 7 a.m., but no. Yeah.
I'm sure you can see there, but some great comments that both of us think the 12 has been the best so far, which I think for drinkability right now, 100%. Yeah, very drinkable, creamy, a fantastic lineup of wines, creamy. All excellent, but all very different, which is great because you're trying to express each vintage, as you said before. You're trying to take what's in the vineyard and put it in a bottle. And this lineup is definitely showing that.
And you said creamy for the 12. Very like this adjective, creamy. It's about this sweetness and this round cool fruit developing. And I think it's totally the feeling with 12. It's this sensation of sweetness, of something extremely pleasant in mouth, and in terms of drinkability, maybe 12 is one of the best vintage to have for your next dinners and next lunch.
For sure, excellent. Thank you. So, folks, I can see a lot of people pouring wine, which is great. You do need to, if you haven't already, pour the next 4 wines. So it's going in, yeah. So pretty easy in terms of the lineup. I do recommend if you have enough glasses, it is a good idea to pour all 4 of them. I know we've said this before, but with how we put the little bottles together, and because we remove all of the sort of air completely, it does make them very sterile. So you do need to just pour them out. So pour out all 4 if you do have 4 glasses, or at least 1 ahead. So Damien, I think looking at everyone, we've got most people there by the look of it with their wines. So we're ready for 2013. This is going to be a fun lineup, this one. They've all been good so far, but yeah.
The 2013 wasn't a gift from Mother Nature, because it started with lots of difficulties, big medium pressure in spring, a summer itself which has been very capricious, few rain showers here and there. In fact, is only the month of July which has been dry enough and sunny enough to work on the quality of the skins of the berries, and to work on the phenolic maturities. And in fact, this year is very strange, because we reach the phenolic maturity. So we sort of achieved the fine tannins that we are looking for every year in July, but with the concentration in terms of sugar, the too high acidities also late August, and so in fact the technological maturity of the grapes that we couldn't reach because of this too cool, too humid summer. I saw the beginning of the question, but
the question is about the winemaker. So in terms of the winemaking for all of the wines we're looking at tonight, same people or different?
Same people. Well, no, sorry. 2001, Thomas wasn't here yet. It was Philippe Chardon, who retired a few years after, and Thomas arrived in 2004. So from 2004 and till actual vintages, it's Thomas. It's the same team. Sabrina also, Pernet, our technical director, was already part of the team. So you have the same people behind the wines, behind all those wines, apart from the 2001. And so 2013, again, it was this mission to reach maturities, but with a weather forecast which is against you from beginning till the end. And the humidity then in autumn came up with rot, gray rot. And so it has been a big pressure, to launch the harvest and to make sure that we enter all the harvest before the sanitary aspect, was declining too drastically. And so very quick, very intense harvest with a very, very small window to harvest everything, to harvest the 66 hectares of vines, and with an obvious lack of maturities for many plots. So the satisfying point is July, and with the quality of the tannins, the phenolic maturity we reached on the plateau and on a few plots, but very selective ones. And the second thing is the freshness, all the acidities which became a little bit more acceptable thanks to the month of September, which came up with a few sunny days, with a few dry conditions, but not for too long. And this is how we decided to only use 1/3 of the production to make the grand vin and to produce a little bit of alter ego, but that was tough. And the selection had to be very drastic. And we focused only on the plots, which managed to naturally reach all the 3 maturities we need to make fine wines: aromatic maturities, phenolic maturities, and technological maturities. So a year of choices, but at the end to come up with a very elegant wine with fantastic tannins, because on the quality of the tannins, I won't conceive anything than just that. You know, this 13 is successful on that. You know, the structure, the precision of the tannins, they are very sharp, they are very precise, they are just wonderful. There is a lack of concentration, and so it's not a very intense and profound fruit, but that makes this wine extremely approachable and very pleasant to drink already. And it also have a potential of aging because of the acidity still very present, and because of those very delicate tannins, this very, very smart structure. The thing is, with a lack of intensity for the fruit, if you give to this wine, I don't know, another 10, 15 years, I don't know how this fruit will react. If it will develop more complexity, more sophistication, or if the fruit will continue to be like this, very discreet, very shy, and just being pleasant, charming, but I think not enough to make this wine a spectacular wine. But again, you know, Bordeaux can't produce spectacular wines every year, and I think it's important just to save this very modest attitude of the 13 and being just a very fresh, well-balanced wine with a very singular attitude. And again, it's so underestimated that when people will start to drink their 13 in the next few years, they will just realize that, well, okay, it wasn't that bad at the end. And because the price was also extremely acceptable, that makes this wine a good value for money.
Yeah, Damien, I can't
we
help
destroyed the 2007 like this. Oh, sorry.
No, that's fine. I was just thinking, you know, we're very spoilt tonight because we're looking at a range of vintages that include some of the greatest years. And I think if you have this 2013 without any of these other vintages around, you know, we've got a comment here that it's very approachable right now. I think it's also a very enjoyable glass of red wine right now, you know, and knowing the, you know, the diversity of quality across this vintage, you know, I would take my hat off to Chateau Palmer on producing this. That was a challenging year, and that's a lovely red wine.
Very challenging. 13 degree of alcohol, quite low. Challenging, you know, from the beginning till the end in terms of weather. Important choices to make in terms of winemaking, in terms of selection of plots. But at the end, such a good glass of red wine, as you said. And you know, it was Easter recently, and so bon, in southwest of France there is an old tradition to cook lamb, so low temperature cooking lamb. So it's called in French the l'agneau de 7 heures, so 7 hours lamb, and we have this with beans, round beans, with a tomato and so it's extremely old-fashionable, traditional grandma dish for Easter, but it's delicious. Well, the thing is, when you have this for your lunch, then you can skip dinner, you can skip the lunch the day after. It's too rich, but it's also extremely delicious. And the acidity of the 13 with such a long cooked dish with all those persisting flavors, persisting aromas, the freshness and the approachability of the 13 would be a good balance, I think. I open, of course, some bottle of wines during Easter, during the weekend. And I tried the battle Palmer 13 with a Pichon Comtesse 13 because I'm a very loyal supporter of Pichon, and both on wines show lots of class and was just absolutely perfect with the lamb. It was a very, very good good pairing.
Excellent, very good, thank you. So what have we got next? We move on to 2014, yeah?
Yep. First vintage, fully biodynamic, or let's say first vintage when the vineyard is conducted biodynamic. Um, 2014, I know this vintage very well because that's the first vintage that I've participated to. I arrived at Palmer in 2013, but the wine was already produced. The 13 was already in barrels, and so I was there for the Primer campaign. So let's say that I haven't been witnessing this 13 physically, and so 14 for me is my first vintage at Palmer, being part of the team. And I remember just a very smooth, pleasant season, good summer, again, without any excess, no episode of heat wave, a little bit of rain in July, but less than 40, 50 millimeters. August, same, maybe a little too much of rain in 14. And so at the end of the month of August, the vintage had nothing quite special. And in fact, what makes this 14 so pleasant is the Indian summer. What we call the Indian summer is the back season when it's sort of extension of the summer. And September 14, October 2014 were absolutely perfect in terms of weather, because we had sunny days, very hot temperatures, like summer temperatures. And most important, in both cases, September, October, we had very fresh nights. And it's the combination of the sunny days and to work on the concentration of the grapes, the maturation of the grapes, and working on the seeds of the skins of the berries. Is this moment that we started to come up with a wine with a more interesting potential than we expected, and the fresh nights permitted to, after concentrating during the whole day, the fresh nights was permitting to keep the acidities, save the freshness. So at the end, 14 is just about a very well matured, concentrated fruit, but with the freshness of a cold year, almost cold. And it's very rare, because usually you have a year which is hot and dry, and at the end you come up with a quite exotic, quite Mediterranean touch in the way that the fruit develop itself, or you have a year which is a bit of which is more about certain classicism in the structure, in the way that the fruit is very subtle, delicate. But 14, no, you have very vibrant and profound fruit, like you could get on hot years, but in terms of freshness, in terms of structure, you have something extremely classic because of those fresh nights. And I also remember that very well because last weekend of October, you could go on the seaside in the Basque Country or in Bordeaux. We still had 30 plus degrees. It was fantastic. That also explains the quite late harvest in 14. I think we finished, if I'm not mistaken, the Cabernet Sauvignon almost the third week of October. And it's rare to go till the third week of October. But the thing is, the sanitary aspect of the grapes was perfect. It wasn't rot at all. It wasn't humid at all. It was just hot and dry. So we had a boulevard, to organize the harvest and just to come and pick up here and there some grapes and just wait for all parcels to reach their optimal maturities. So at the end, for me, a beautiful, super elegant wine with lots and lots of class. I personally love it. Again, my kind of wine, very much, the 14.
I think, Damien, we've got some comments there on it, but just tasting it, I think I can imagine this going to be a wine like that 2001. That sort of very classic style as an old wine. Yeah. I can see this being that kind of old Bordeaux. Do you agree, or what do you think?
Totally agree. 01, 14, that's the face of Bordeaux. That's, again, for me, it refers to all those first tasting when I was younger, when when I was a silly kid, which was interested in wine, but was just starting to understand all the fascination with wine and all the complexity that it comes with. And for me, that's the taste of Bordeaux. This elegance, this palette, this precision in the aromas, and again, this freshness of the fruit. I love it. It's that's Bordeaux.
I think, and maybe not so much Chateau Palmer, but I'd be interested in your view. I think some of the more recent vintages, particularly sort of 16, 17, 18 onwards, have been more this classic style of Bordeaux that you talk about. And it's quite obvious that there's a certain wine critic in that Robert Parker is not reviewing the wines anymore. Do you think we're seeing, because of that, more of a return to the older styles?
Yes, I mean, I don't want to speak on behalf of the region of Bordeaux, because I definitely can't do that. But the thing is, at a certain point, at a certain moment, it was a crazy race to big maturities and late maturities, and so I don't know, this over maturity was offering very interesting wines at some point, and was showing, on all the most exaggerated characters of Bordeaux can be sometimes and can have sometimes. But yes, I think we are back to this classicism that you refer to, Liz. And I think for the sake of consumers and for the sake of the first lovers of Bordeaux, that's just good news. Yeah.
I couldn't agree more. We've had some lovely comments here on the 14, just how approachable those tannins are, and the elegance, sophistication, finesse, and balance, as well as the concentration.
Finesse. Yeah. And I like the way it goes, in mouth. It's very clear and very clean. You have this. We're talking about tension for white wines, more for the whites than the reds. But it's funny, like you have the sort of tension in the 14. It comes with this very subtle, fragile fruit, but then following a very straight line, and I love it.
Very good, thank you. So what are we next? 16.
Yeah.
Damien, we've just had a question which I'll answer. What happened to the 15? I think we sold it, is the answer, in terms of what's missing. So all of these wines have come from Glengarry's stocks. So, sometimes for things like this, we would air freight stock. But as I'm sure you're all well aware of, we don't have a lot of planes coming to New Zealand at the moment. We do know the cost of air freighting stock to New Zealand at the moment, and it's at around sort of $90 a bottle. So yeah, it's all from our stock and we sold it. So there's the answer, Richard. It's a good answer. Sorry, over 2016, Damien.
Yeah. Like the 2010 we had a little earlier. 16 is perfect, almost perfect, or getting very close to perfection, because he has everything at the right place in the good proportion. It's clearly too young to have this wine now, and so now the question is about the potential. So it's important to focus on tasting a potential and tasting, this very solid basis of this wine, and trying to imagine, trying to predict the way then it will evolve and the way it will continue to develop its complexity and its richness. But 16 as a base, again, you're starting with a very solid wine. There are massive tannins. It's massively concentrated with a big structure, but which is totally integrated. It's not marked by the aging in wooden barrels. It's already integrated, so that means that the wine has a real energy, a real capacity to handle that, and at the end to play its partition, and so to reveal a palette of aromas, a palette of fruits, which is just about profound, rich red fruit notes, a little bit of dark fruit notes as well, with the persisting aromas in the finish, in the final of the mouth. But it's too early for sure. But if you want to invest in one of the greatest vintage recently produced in Bordeaux, then 16 is the guy. You can't be disappointed by 16 in the next 15, 20 years. It's a massive wine.
Yeah, Damien, some great comments there.
What is funny is the blend of this vintage, again, is pretty much the same thing that we have planted in the vineyard. It's 47 Merlot, 47 Cabernet, and 6% Petit Verdot. That's precisely what is planted here at the Chateau, which means that, well, the parcels just reach optimal maturities and when just perfect in their growing cycle, and at the end to come up with their singularity, and 16 is Palmer by DNA.
Can you see those comments
which
there,
improve the
Damien, or do you want me to
consistency.
read?
Sorry?
Can you see the comments, or would you like me to read?
Yeah, please, Liz.
Yeah. Easier for you. First of all, on the 16, just some comments on it. We have, 16 is a very interesting wine, possibly the best treasure for the cellar. It's bold and balanced. Then Stevens agreed with that and said that the aromatic profile is very different, with hints of dried herb, and I get a hint of blue fruit as well as black fruit. And then, Richard's noted just so much potential. The question that we have is, in terms of these vintages that we're looking at, is the oak regime similar across these vintages?
Yeah. It's very stable at Palmer. The whole philosophy at Palmer is it's pretty simple. Making wine and managing a vineyard shouldn't be something fashion. Shouldn't be something following fashions, and so it has nothing to do with trendy or not trendy. It's a question of consistency and stability, and I think the most difficult when you have vintages like 16 or 18 is because when you could extract more, when you could wait for bigger maturities, etc. The whole idea also is to respect a certain signature, a certain tradition, and so to respect the identity of a terroir and respect the identity of a wine which is produced for now close to 400 years, and so you have a big mission, you have a big legacy to deal with when you're producing Palmer. And so that's why consistency is one thing very important to us. And again, no place for fashion stuff and fashion experiments. Biodynamic practices, for example, same, has nothing to do with fashions or a certain trend, etc. Being biodynamic today and coming back to those ancestral methods is the only thing to do. We realized how much we've been polluting our soils, we realized how much chemistry has nothing to do in agriculture and in piece of lands such as vineyards, and chemistry anyway has no space, nothing to do with agriculture in general. And so we are trying to recovering from the 70s, from the 80s, from this massive industrialization and the mechanization and the race of yields, etc. And also the moment that we created lots of dependence to many treatments, to many products. And so that's why biodynamics, again, no fashion at all, is the cap, is the direction to take for tomorrow. And if people still think that it's fashion, I'm sure if you discuss with those people in the next few years, they will also turning into more organic and biodynamic approach for their vineyards, because that's the way we want to consume things today. A few years ago, you were going to a supermarket and you were buying a kilo of tomatoes mid-December, and no one was shocked. Today, eating tomatoes mid-December, it's completely silly, because that's not the season. So that's not the way we want to consume anymore. And I think we are getting too smart and too demanding on what we have in our plates, what we have in our glass. So that's why what we're doing now is really for good.
Excellent. I just made a comment there, Damien, but just in summary, I think you're showing us a textbook tonight of what recent vintages in Bordeaux are, because everything is the same throughout. You've got the same grapes, you're doing the same thing with oak. It's an expression of the year, and it's fantastic to see. So very refreshing. So tell us about 2017.
Bien sûr, madame.
This is good.
17 very looks like the 14 in terms of balance, in terms of freshness, and also the place of the fruit. Well, thing is, you may have a little bit more of exotic aromas. You have something a little bit more exotic maybe in the 17, because, well, first is a year of frost, black frost. So the nights of the 27th and 28th of April, we've lost a significant part of the vineyard. And so the grapes had less competition to work on their maturities, and so for the skins and seeds to also reach great maturity. I remember in 17 we did extract a little more than usual, because we had very small berries with very thick skins, and which permitted to get tannins from skins, from the seeds, and that's how in 17 you have such a beautiful and such an elegant touch of grain. The quality of the grain, the quality of the tannins is for me superb, and it refers to a certain harmony, a certain balance that I have a little bit with the 14. But again, with a little bit more of exotism in the palate. That's a vintage with, again, a lack of notoriety, because he arrived after the crazy 16, and it's before the massive 18 we produced. But we have to say that 17 is just wonderful today in terms of quality and even in terms of price. It's really, really good value for money. But the berries were very small. That explains also the small yield. I think it was only 31 or 32 hectoliter per hectare, which is lower than our average.
Damien, I don't know whether you can, so we've got someone there who says they were at Palmer in the 16, that's why it's a great year. And then someone who loves the tannin profile of the 2017. Agree. I think this 2017 is just, I love the elegance to the 17s. I think, it's a great year. I'll just go back to the question beforehand that was from Dave. I don't know whether you can see that one there as well, Damien. Okay. The question has come in terms of the wines that we're trying tonight, in terms of our retail prices, they're anywhere between $400 to $1,000. And how is that figure calculated? And then are they what we can currently buy them at, or are they historic costs? And how much of this goes back to the winery? So that's quite a lot of questions all in one. What I can probably say, Dave, is just to answer a few of them. Those are our current retail prices. Yes, they are very different. There's a number of reasons for them, and I just had a quick flick through them just to have a look at the prices. I think there's a couple of factors here. Some of the wines, to be really honest, we should increase the price. I don't know what Damien thinks here, but they're wines that we have bought a long time ago, and we're not particularly good at Glengarry in revaluing the retail price of our wines. So you've got some bargains there. That would be one thing. I think the other thing is that with Chateau Palmer, when you get vintages like 2013, you're getting a very realistic price for the wine. I think, you know, remembering back what that was released for, it was reflective of the fact that the vintage conditions are not as great as the other years. So you're seeing some variation there in release prices from Palmer. Add to that, yes, some of the wines here, we bought them on release, we sold them all, and we have subsequently bought again on the open market, which is how Bordeaux is traded. And, you know, we buy from very good negotiants, but yes, they will be more than when they were released, when they were in barrel. I don't know, Damien, have I summed it up well in terms of why you get difference in price in Bordeaux?
Yeah, absolutely. This was extremely clear. And the evolution of prices, well, first it follows very closely the quality of the production, and then you know, because we don't sell direct, but we sell our whole production year after year to negotiations. Then our wines belongs to the market, and the market, when sometimes the market got very into a vintage for some specific reasons, or sometimes for no reason, then it has an impact on the demand and the offer, which is still limited. And then this is how you have vintages a bit more speculative, and some others which are a bit more flat. So that explains also the roller coaster from a year to another. Well, I kind of agree with Liz. You know, it's the answer was very clear, and as a consumer as well, you know, because I don't only drink Palmer, you know, I buy many other wines as well, from Burgundy, from Bordeaux, from the Rhone Valley, from Italy, and so I'm also the victim of sometimes, you know, this evolution of prices. I managed to find on the comments, and so I found we were at the gates of Palmer in 2016. That's why it was a great year. Just saying. Yeah, I think so. But for sure, for sure, it is a really cool vintage. I like the 17 very much. Those very small berries were quite fun to vinify, but they came up with so refined, so beautiful tannins. The grain of the tannins again is so delicate. Just love it. I saw also a very different profile, higher extraction and skin to juice ratio. Well, for sure. It wasn't lots of flesh, lots of juice in the berries of 17. Again, they were very small, so the skins. It was important to extract a little more, because first the skins and seeds were very mature, so it was possible to extract tannins working with slightly higher temperatures, and also doing a little bit more of pumping overs. Maybe usually we will do 1 or 2 pumping overs a day in the first 2 weeks of vinifications. I think, if I'm not mistaken, in 17 it was 3 to 4 pumping overs during the first week of the alcoholic fermentation. So the first half of October. And so that explains again this grain of tannins and this particular quality on that year. Concerned about the climate change. Completely, of course, because the climate change is definitely not anecdotic. It's real. It's here, and it has first an impact on the budding. We realize that year after year, the budding and the moment that the vines is leaving its dormancy state, you know, very early spring or even late winter. Everything goes very fast now, and that's why frosts are more and more threatened, because the vegetative cycle of the vines is so early that frost can have bigger and bigger impacts year after year. So that's the first thing. And secondly, if the hot years continue to be that extreme, like it has been the case recently, we will have to harvest the Merlot in July maybe, because the Merlot will be the first victim of these two important hydric stress, and because it also doesn't have the capacity to resist against 1, 2, 3 episodes of heat wave. For you to understand, in Bordeaux, when you're here in Bordeaux, when you know this place very well, before you had only hot years or fresh years, but nowadays it's different. It feels like the weather has no more filter. In the same year, you can start the season with a crazy mildew pressure because of a too important amount of rain in May and June. Then suddenly you have an episode of heat wave the first week of July. And then after going back to a bit more normal weather conditions, then suddenly again, late July or current August, you have 1, 2, 3 episodes of heat wave, sometimes episodes of heat wave, which are about 3 to 4 days, which is not very long, but which definitely has an impact on the way that the vines is growing. And sometimes the stop of the growth of vines is dangerous when the hydric stress becomes too important and that the roots can't find its nutrition in the soil. And all this for sure has an impact on then the arrival of maturities and so on the style of the wines. So we are very, very concerned. And what will happen to the Merlot in the next 10, 15 years? The topic is here, and we don't have the answer yet.
Damien, the last question there is, or the last for now, is do you have a favorite vintage from what we've tasted tonight?
Well, again,
all of them?
if it's if it was for today, my dinner tonight, and if I have time to cook something, etc., I would go with the 2001. I would go with the 2001 because it's superb. It's so delicate, so precise, so refined. That would be my first choice. But then for more casual consumption, I don't know, back home with my wife during the aperitif, you get a few slices of ham, Iberico, something like that. A 14 or 10 would also be extremely cool, you know, to have for this kind of simple finger food.
Perfect. Very good. Damien, I'm sure we're going to have a few more comments there and thoughts, but just wanted to say thank you very much for jumping online tonight and taking us through the wines. So lovely to see outside and see Bordeaux and all that sunshine. You have made me just miss being there more. It's just far too long. We need this world to sort itself out. But no, thank you very much. And, you know, I always enjoy every time I taste Palmer. Absolutely love what you're doing there and just the whole philosophy. And I think, you know, it's more than what's just in the bottle. It's everything that you're doing. So thank you very much for taking us through the wines. And, you know, we've got a lovely comment here. I'll just read it to you. It'll be easier for you. It says, wow, what an amazing opportunity to taste this incredible lineup. Thanks for the opportunity, Liz and team. The Vin Blanc was great, new discovery, and love how each vintage reflects the conditions. They're all great wines, but different for a variety of reasons, and great to connect and understand the reasons why, which you brilliantly articulated, Damien. Thank you very much. I learned a lot. And the comments continue in that. So thank you very much.
Oh, well, thank you, Liz, because again, it's so frustrating to be stuck here and not to be able to share what we do. And so even a Zoom tasting, you know, I'm happy that make my day, because we are doing all this because for sharing, you know, wines is a bottle of wine has to be shared anyway, you know, and so that's the whole purpose of what we do, and the purpose of this passion we share together, Liz. So happy that you gave us this opportunity. So thank you for the organization, for the samples you arranged. I guess that in terms of logistics, there was a little bit of work to do. So thank you for being such a cool and professional ambassador for the chateau, because we are far from each other, but luckily we have you to extend this job in the vineyard.
Thank you. And I know